Thank you very much for having me. What an amazing honor to be able to come not only back to Beit Gabriel, which is the place where so much Torah is learned, more importantly to come to a siyum of Shmiras Halashon, Shmat Halashon, at this point of the year where how we treat each other is so critical to our ability to bring or fight off Geula. To be able to come now, really, right at the beginning, and speak to a group of people that have spent so much time learning how to treat each other better is a true honor, and I thank you very much for it. And before we start, my bracha is that I hope that you have a whole day planned for Tisha B'Av. I hope that we should be zocheh to have it in Yerushalayim, where we can have some sushi over there. I don't think we have sushi in Yerushalayim. Shawarma, we'll have a ton of shawarma. And we should be zocheh to, before Tisha B'Av comes, do stuff like this in Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh from Harary and Meaningless. So for those who have heard me speak, you understand that it's something that I care about so much. There's something that keeps me up at night and that I talk about a lot. And the answer to this question has a lot of different approaches. Because at the end of the day, all of us are striving for something. We want something. And if you've heard me speak before, I always open almost in the same way because it's something that opens up almost everything right, which is we all want something from our lives. We all want greatness. And greatness is something that we strive for. We want, after 120, to look back at our lives and say, you know what, ups and downs, ins and outs, at the end of the day, I lived a great life. Even as we're going through in our day, what gets us up at night, what makes us feel like the day was great, was how we acted, because we know there's something inside us that needs to be brought out. I believe each and every one of us right now are in this room is because we know that deep down there's something inside us that needs to be brought out. More. We yearn to be more, to be greater. And the question, like I said, I open up a lot, is how? And there's a lot of ways. But tonight I want to talk about maybe one of the most powerful ways of greatness. I was zocheh to have a few Rebbes in my life. One of my Rebbes is a Rav named Rav Noach Weinberg. Rav Noach Weinberg is the dean and the founder of an organization called Eish HaTorah. I'll never forget one time I was learning with him. And we were sitting together, and he said to me a story that I'll never forget. He said, imagine, if you will, in Times Square, there's a man literally on top of a huge building. And on the top floor of this huge building, he's in the middle of this huge deal. Paper signing, and this guy's sitting there, and he's about to make $10 million on this deal. And it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and finally at 2 a.m. the paper's signed, and he has it in his hand, and he's worth $10 million, and he goes downstairs in the elevator, and like the way it works in Manhattan sometimes, the guy on top's worth $10 million. The guy on the floor is living on the floor. He's literally sleeping on the floor. He has no home. That's how it works in New York sometimes. And he goes downstairs, and he walks outside, and there he sees a guy literally living in a bunch of bags in the corner on Times Square. He's a good man, and he feels terrible for the guy. Here, he just made $10 million. And he learned growing up that you're supposed to tithe your money, you're supposed to give masa. So he goes, you know what? I'm giving this guy money. Excuse me. That was part of the dramatic effect, by the way. Wow, this is loud. I'm giving him masa. And right there at 2 o'clock in the morning, he signs a check for $1 million. And the guy's sleeping, and he's got that little shopping cart, with all like the tchotchkes on it, like, the lamps and all the Coke bottles, and he sticks the envelope on it, and he feels good about himself, and he gets into his car, and he goes home, and the guy, the vagabond wakes up the next morning, he's got the dirty hair that hasn't been showered in so long, and the black clothing, and he wakes up, and he gives a little bit of a fetch, and he holds back onto his shopping cart, and he goes around, and he takes out a bottle, and he puts in 5 cents here, and he finds another little lamp, and then a TV on the corner. Through his whole day, never once sticking his hand to the bottom of the basket, in which he would have found more money than all his bottles put together. And he says, if you want to understand what it means to be alive, he told me, this isn't Charlie Harary, this is Noach Weinberg, because each and every one of us are built and born with a soul. That soul is a piece of the divine. That's not like we're born with our bodies and our minds. We literally have what powers us right now is that each and every one of us are created with a chelek elokam mimal, a piece of God from above. God, all-knowing, all-powerful, all courage, all everything He is. We are sourced from that energy. It's in us. If your eyes are open, more religious, less religious, you're into it, you're not into it, you're this background, that background, nonsense. If your eyes are open right now, what is keeping your eyes open is that you are connected to the source of everything. And inside us is more stuff, and we go around trying to get this and get that and do this and do that and wear this and get this honor and these letters after our names, and we're trying so hard to put all our stuff in our basket. And for most of us, he told me, we never stick our hands to the bottom of that basket to find the source of more than we could ever dream of. We never have to find greatness, ever. We have greatness. The question is, how do we reveal it? The reason why these lights are on is not because Con Ed has a big, huge power plant with energy. That's good. The greatness of Con Ed was that they figured out a way to get that power plant through all to this one room. Distribution is the challenge. We have greatness. If you're here today, you're being powered by the creator of the universe. The challenge in your life isn't whether or not you're great. The challenge is whether or not you can take that greatness from inside and bring it out into your life. Can you channel that nuclear energy into your relationships? Can you channel that nuclear energy into your career, into your children, into yourself? When you look in the mirror, what do you see back? Can you channel it into the world? And by the way, that's our job. This is why we're on this planet, because God said there's a people, and everyone's wonderful, and God bless humanity, but there's a people that is charged with figuring out a way to channel Him to humanity. The challenge of greatness is not whether or not you're great. The challenge of greatness is whether or not you can bring it out into your life. And the question for today is how. Because if we can bring greatness into our lives, if we tonight, not right now, before you leave tonight, can figure out a way to create that channel, to create that wire from the nuclear power plant to the house, if we can figure out a way right now to figure out how to tap into that source so it goes into every area of my life. Everything that I do, I want to be powered by that. I don't want any blockages. If we can figure out today how to do that, our life changes today. It may take time to implement it, but our life changes today. And the question is how. So there's a lot of ways, but there's one primary way which I want to talk about tonight. This is the primary method to bring out spirituality into your world. We're doing a duo in a minute, by the way. He can take over, brother. We can switch.
Okay. We have to go.
What do you mean?
He's not leaving.
Oh, okay. How do we do it? So one of the great things about being born as a human being is that God says you are created not only with a chelek elokam imal, a piece of God from within, you are created b'tselem elokim. What b'tselem elokim means is that you're created in God's image. And we have this obligation, which it says in the Gemara, we have this obligation to act like God. It's called, the line they use is Mahu Af'ata. It says in the Gemara, we have an obligation that if God is something, we have to be something. If He's compassionate, we have to be compassionate. If He's merciful, we have to be merciful. Why? Because we're created in His image. We're not like totally separate from Him. It's hard to see this. But our bodies represent godlies. The world is built with something called sphirot, and our bodies literally represent that almost intact. Right now, when you look at somebody, what you're looking at is the closest thing humanity has to something that looks like God. We're created in His image, which means that we have access to the same powers that even God does. It doesn't mean we can be God. God is well beyond us. It means that if we see something, that a power that God has in our book, in the Torah, what that means is that there's something about that power that we're trying to understand how to access as well. If God does something that we learn about, it's not because He's showing off, or that's just for God. What He's showing us is that if I'm doing something, then you can do something. If I'm showing you that I'm compassionate, then you can be compassionate. If I'm showing you a power that I have, God says, I'm showing it to you because I want you to know that's your power too. In a small scale, but that's your power. Greatness is what we all want. How do we get it? So how do we create a great future? So I once saw a line in front of my CEO's desk. When I was working for a company called RXR, he says the best way to predict the future is to create it. The greatest power that God has is the power of creation. That's what makes him so powerful, that he creates. So the question is, what's God's creative power? So if you notice something amazing, God is not a person. He doesn't have any attributes of a person. And if you look in the Torah as to how they describe God creating the world, what language do they use? What verbs are they using? Remember, God created the world. So if you're using the word create or form, there are words in Torah that explain what that is. There's a word called bara. Bara means to create. There's a word called yatzar. Yatzar means to form. There's a word called asa. Asa means to make. So if you think that you're writing the book and you want to say that God, who has no properties that are human, is creating the world, what word should we use when God starts poofing the world together? We should say, God, asa, or yatzar. What does it say? What was the word that God used to create? When God created the world, what verb did he use? Vayomer. Every morning we say, Baruch She Amar V'haya Ha'olam. God didn't speak. He doesn't have a tongue. God spoke, and the world came to being. God did it. Why don't they use the words asa? In Pirkei Avos it says, Ba'asara Ma'amarot, with 10 utterances. Look at the story. Vayomer, 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 Vayomer. He's poofing with Vayomer. Why would you use the word speech when he's not actually speaking, he's creating? And the answers are showing us a secret. That where's God's creative power? In his speech. There's two different ways that you create. In the physical world, you create by action. But before God created the physical world, he created the spiritual world. And we know as Jews that we think the world in front of us is physical. It looks physical, we talk physical, but we know in our core that at the end of the day, the world doesn't start by a physical world. The physical that we have is really a manifestation of the spiritual. This is really a spiritual world. We have physical, but physical comes from spiritual, which is why we even have this crazy idea that if someone, God forbid, was hurt in Israel, we would get into a room and say some Hebrew words. Why would we even do that for? Why would we think that saying words in America would help Israel? Because we know that the health of that little girl who got hurt over the weekend in Israel is going to be fixed or in some way helped because my words in America, because it's not about the physical, because then I would have to be a doctor and go to Israel. Is that the world is really spiritual. So my prayer can have this weird effect that it can go fly all over the world and somehow help somebody far away because we know at our core that what really, really backs the physical world is spiritual. When we're creating physically, what do we have to do? We act, asa, yatzar, bara. When we create spiritually, when God creates spiritually, what does he say? What does he use? Amar, words. Because if you want to know how to create in the spiritual world, the power of creation, this is real power. The way you create spiritually is through speech. And if you look at our Torah, what you find is straight up. Ever wonder these things? Rosh Chodesh comes, and the witnesses come to testify in front of Beit Din, and they walk in, and they know the moon is this time and this time, but the guys don't get up in time to say it's sanctified. Guess what? It's not sanctified. A man and a woman walks down the aisle, and they walk underneath some chuppah. They're total strangers. And there's all these rules around if they're together, if they're alone. The rabbi stands under a chuppah and says a bunch of words. They don't do anything. He doesn't go anywhere with them. He just recites some words. They turn around 5 minutes later, and it says, Nafsho Kashura B'Nafsho. That, yeah, they look like they're two different people, but you don't understand spiritually, the man and woman, it's like they're one soul. Ishto, kigufo. They are like one. What happened? I don't understand something. Like, wait, the dress, the man, what, did I miss something? Was there some kind of like molding going on? Words. There's a concept in Torah called a vow, a neder. If I take an apple, which I'm not doing, I take an apple, and I say, which I am not, that this apple is to me like pork, and then I eat it, it's as if I ate pork. I don't say apple to say apple. What's the difference? It's still an apple. I mean, no. Physically, yeah. Spiritually, I just zapped that fruit. In the spiritual world, I literally made. Can you just, for a minute, let's just take a minute and just appreciate this. We could, at any moment of our lives, change the spiritual DNA of anything we want. Right now, as I speak, you can point to anything. Don't do it. You can point to anything. And say, I treat this as that. Spiritual power. You stand before God on Yom Kippur. The whole year you're doing this, you're doing that, you miss this, you miss that. You stand in front of God and you go, you know what? I am legitimately sorry. What does God say? On the house, forgiven. What? You didn't do anything. The words change who you are. And in fact, there's a rule that if someone does teshuvah and you remind him of his past, it's a sin on you. You know why? Because they like a different person. No, they're not. They just said, I'm sorry. They're the same person. Do me a favor. No. Their words created themselves anew. We're sitting, all of us, on the greatest power in the spiritual world. Each and every one of us. As I speak, I don't care how close or far you feel towards God. As I speak, you are literally sitting on one of the greatest powers in humanity. With your mouth, you can change the spiritual world. That's how God created it. The way God created it was because of His infinite wisdom. He wants us to have control. He wants us to be big. So He created the power within us. And He says the nuclear power plant of greatness is resting within you. The distribution mechanism, the way you create, the way you change, is by just using your words. This is why, by the way, we go crazy with all this Lashon Hara stuff. It's not because like we need more things to restrict us, as if Judaism wasn't restrictive enough. Like, you know what? Fine, now you can't say anything anyway. It's not like that. Because the rabbis are like, this is like you're playing with fire. It's the biggest thing in the world. So the question that I have, I don't know if you share with me, is, sounds awesome. If this was like a movie where, like, you know, you found like the, you know, the rock of the king and you were like poofing things, it'd be awesome. Like, I don't know, it hasn't really been working for me. You know what I'm saying? I've been saying things a lot. It's not like I say something and then like boom, like the whole neighborhood shows up. I'm like, that's awesome. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, ooh, I want an apple, and poof, an apple comes up. For some reason, my words don't seem to be working. Am I wrong? I don't know about you, but as I'm even saying this, I'm like, okay, that sounds great, Charlie, but I don't think you know my words, because my words don't seem to have that power. Did I miss this? When he was passing out the word thing, was I not on the list? Was I sleeping that day? I didn't go to class in time? Why is it that my words don't seem to matter? And the answer is like with everything in life. It's not because we don't have the power. It's because how we use the power. So I'll tell you a story. One of my first, I spent many years as a lawyer. And many of my legal years was in the real estate world. I'll never forget, it was one of my first deals I ever did. And we had gone to a guy who had a retail store. And we sat with him, and he wanted to sell his store. I came with a partner of mine, an older individual, and we said, you're going to get this much money for your store. Let's say it was, $1 million. It was a lot more. Let's say it was $10 million. Okay, great. Why? The way it is, positioning, $10 million. Great. Calls us up a few days later and goes, guys, great news. There's a person from the industry that I knew from years ago. He was looking to move in. We sat down, I looked at him, and we made a deal. Shook his hand, selling the property, $10 million. We're like, wow! Like, can you believe it? Like, we sat in the office, and then you made the deal. Amazing. 2 weeks later, one of the big boxes, Home Depot or Best Buy, one of the big boxes announced that down the block they're opening up a store in a year, which took that little store from $10 million to now $20 million. 2 weeks, he doubled the price. We called it out and goes, do you sign anything? He goes, what are you talking about? He goes, we're coming over right now. We ran running over to the store. We're sitting with him. We're like, my partner, I'll never forget this. I was too scared. He goes, did you sign anything? He goes, what? He goes, did you sign anything on the deal? He goes, no. He goes, what was it? He goes, it was just a handshake. He goes, whew, great news. We just found out Home Depot is opening up. You just doubled the price. You can get $20 million for this. I'll never forget this my whole life. Yeah, it was an older individual. He was a Holocaust survivor. An older individual looked at me and goes, 20 million? But I shook hands on 10 million 2 weeks ago. My partner goes, did you sign anything? He goes, no. He goes, then fine. It's okay. It's not held up in court. He goes, held up in court? He goes, I told another man that we're doing a deal for $10 million. My word is my bond. And here I was, fresh into this new law practice. And I watched two seasoned individuals, two men that spent a career. One man saying, my word is my bond, and one man saying, no, it's not. Your word is meaningless. It's whether you sign it and then sign your name and stamp a notary. At that moment, it became clear why our power of words don't seem to work. Because when they come out of our mouths, you know what we think they are? Meaningless. When we speak, it's like whatever. I don't even mean it when I'm saying it. I even know when I'm saying it that I don't even really mean it. When we say we're starting 8 o'clock, yeah, Jewish time. And if you're Sephardi, forget that. If you're on the same day, you're on time if you're Sephardi. That's the rule. What? We're just saying words. Actually mean it's going to start. You know? I would tell this story. I don't know if you guys heard this from before. I have a very interesting background. My father is, I heard this before. My father's Chalabi. My father comes from Syria. My mother comes from Munkach, which makes me a walking United Nations. That's my life, right? So the most fun we have as a family, I got one side that's complete Sephardim, Syrians, and one side that's complete Ashkenazim. The most fun we have as a family is when we invite the Ashkenazi relatives to the Syrian wedding. You know what I'm talking about, right? 6 o'clock wedding in Syrianville means sometime that night after 12 before dawn, right? 6 o'clock to Ashkenazim means if you're there 6:15, you're a little late. There's no more fun that you can. This is fun for everyone, by the way. This is family fun for everyone. Sometimes we make a mistake. We don't do it on purpose. We send so we send a 6 o'clock invitation to the Syrians. So they know 6 o'clock plus 4 hours minus time zones. I'll get there by 10. We'll be on time. But sometimes the same invitations go to the Ashkenazi relatives. 6 o'clock means 6 o'clock. There's a whole family outside Shari Zion looking around. The lights are dark. Rose, yes, Heshi. What, are we in the right place? It says Shari Zion, Ocean Parkway. I don't understand. But why are the lights out for? I don't know. 7 o'clock, the bride comes in. She's not even dressed yet for her own wedding. She looks and she goes, are you part of the help? What are you doing here so early? 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they're like, what happened? Like, I get hit by a truck. We don't really mean it when we say 6. We just use words. I'll see you later. Maybe. 6:30, maybe. Oh, that was amazing. Not so much. Our whole life, this happens by the way when we're little, to all of us. You know what's amazing is that anyone who has little kids, you've been here before, right? At some point, the little kids realize that words are meaningless. Because when they're very little, like you try to bribe them, remember talking about it? Like, if you go to bed, tomorrow morning I'm giving you ice cream. And the kid's like, bed for ice cream? Totally, right? They wake up in the morning, they're like, ice cream? And you're like, no, I didn't really mean ice cream, you know what I'm saying? And they're like, no, we had a deal. You said if you go to bed, like you said you're getting me a car. I don't understand. So I'm like, no, just, right? And then at some point in everyone's life, this is what happens. Especially if you're boys, it happens earlier. You're playing ball in the living room, and your mother goes, don't play ball in the living room. And you go, Ma, I got it, it's okay. And the ball goes the wrong way on you, hits the vase, and like in slow motion, smash. Your mother comes running in, and you see that you're dead. But as you're about to get whisked off to jail, you realize that your little sister, the 2-year-old sister, is crawling around that area. You go, wait, Ma, it wasn't me. You don't understand something. She bumped into it, and I tried to save her. And your mother goes, oh, okay, be careful, more careful next time. And you're like, that that works. Then you go to school and your teacher's like, where's your homework? And you're like, we had a wedding last night and I didn't get to it because I got home at 2 in the corner. She's like, we can do it tomorrow. You're like, I like this. I can say whatever I want, even if it's not true and stuff happens. And then you're with some people and they say things and you're like, you don't really think they're cool, but you want to feel like you're cool. And you're like, yeah, that's really awesome. My other guy's an idiot. And it was like, you're cool, you're one of us. And you're like, wait, I can use this mouth? And like, I can say whatever I want, even if it's not true, and get things from it? This is amazing. And you start going through your life. And you know what happens after a while? You don't even know where truth is. Like, I remember once I had that, I don't even know where it is anymore. I've been just saying whatever they want me to say for so long. I walk into a room and already know what they want me to say. But I even forget what's going on the inside. My word is my bond? I don't think so. Maybe if it was written and signatured with a notary, maybe. But if it comes out of my mouth, meaningless. And God looks at it and goes, what? What? I gave you the creative power to change the world. I gave you my power. I told you from the book, Vayomer, and things start to happen. I told you that you can create. You can stare where you are and literally stare at an apple and you can zap the spirituality. You can stand under a chuppah with a glass of wine and take 2 individuals and tie their souls up. You can stand before me with an entire litany of things you did wrong and with one sincere word completely wipe it out. And you did what with it? Wait, what? You know why it's not working for us? It's because we think it's meaningless. Oh, when I go to a big rabbi and wait for 3 hours to wait online and he says, Tiyeh bracha, we're like, oh, awesome. But me? No, I'm not a big rabbi. I'm not even a rabbi. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm this, I'm connected, I'm not connected, I'm this religious, I'm not religious. No. My words are meaningless. Yeah, if he's, yeah, of course. When those people say you're going to have a bracha, it's a different story. The rabbi says so. But no. Me? I'm meaningless. Do I really matter? I'm not holy. My words are meaningless. One after the other. Jew after Jew, human after human. You can imagine God's feeling when he looks down and he hands you a Maserati and you're going 5 miles an hour and go, this car can't go fast. And God goes, what? Wait. Hello? No. I built you like me. Don't you know that I built you with me inside you? These words apply to all of you. No, don't use it, don't waste it. One after the other. We go through our lives and go, I don't understand why I can't make a difference. I don't understand why I can't be more powerful. I don't understand why this doesn't work for me. Oh, I'm just meaningless. One of the greatest moments maybe in Jewish history was when Moshe stared down Paro. Remember that? Moshe and Paro. They went at each other 10 times. Paro goes, you're not leaving. He goes, really, I'm not leaving? Can you imagine what it must have been like? Paro was the strongest man in civilization. And Moshe was the man representing God. And they went head to head again and again and again. The last time they stood off against each other was Moshe saying, here's the story, Paro. I am telling you, midnight, we're bringing Makat Bechorot, and you're done. The last time they stood off. What does Moshe say? In the Pasuk, look at it. It says, Kechatzot halayla. We're coming around midnight. Around midnight, Moshe works for the guy upstairs. I'm talking about he knows when midnight is. When he says midnight, God's got midnight. Why would Moshe say Kechatzot laila? So the answer they give is because Paro has his own way of calculating time. And he was worried that Paro's time would hit 12, and then nothing would happen. And Paro would go, really? He said midnight, and like 12:01, God would show up and do this amazing miracle. And the rabbis go, really? Like God doesn't have a track record? He's 9 for 9, and he's like a minute off. And the rabbis answered, oh, you must not understand the power of words. Moshe knew 12 o'clock was 12 o'clock, but he was scared that Paro would have miscalculated, and just for 2 seconds of Paro thinking, Moshe said 12, it's not 12. That's 2 seconds too long. Because when you speak, it happens. And this happens, by the way, in our society. There's one thing that I think is left in this society. There's one line that we say that's the only thing that's a creator. When a man asks a woman, will you marry me? Can you imagine if he goes, will you marry? She goes, yes. Then all of a sudden people are spending money, having parties, getting, drink. Imagine 6 months later, wedding dresses, flowers. He shows up. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" "We're having your wedding." He's like, "Oh, you took that seriously?" I was just words. I mean, I can see how you would have taken that seriously, but oh my God, I was totally kidding. I was just joking. Can you imagine? When do they get married? When they walk down the aisle, or when he says, "Will you marry me?" When does it get executed and finished? At the aisle. When is the first creation of their marriage? When he says, "Will you marry?" Because at that point, they're getting married. Unless something happens along the way. That's how it works. When you speak and it's your bond, you know what happens? In the spiritual world, it's really your bond. And the physical world just has to catch up and make it happen. Because you've already decided that it is your word. So why don't we do this? So I want to speak about 2 areas. 2 areas right now where we can work on it, and then why we're not doing it, and how this all ties into this exact period of time. The one area that all of us, and each and every one of us, don't spend enough time, like I said earlier, is the area of our own word. I spoke to him the other day, a friend of mine. He said to me, "Charlie, I got to lose weight." I said, "Okay." He goes, "My brother's getting married in 6 months. I'm a size whatever. I want to be 4 sizes skinnier." I said, "Great. So do it." He goes, "I'm doing it." I go, "Really?" He goes, "I am going to be 4 sizes skinnier in 6 months." I said, "Amazing." So I go, "When are you going shopping?" He goes, "For what?" I'm like, "Your suit." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Go buy a suit 4 sizes skinnier. Now." He's like, "No, but what if it doesn't happen?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" "You just said you're going to be 4 sizes skinnier. Go now. You got 6 months and buy a suit in the new size that you want." When we say we're going to do something, when we say we're going to be something, the question for tonight is, do we even mean it when it comes out? Because if we just tonight find 2 things, if just tonight we ask ourselves, from now on, forget my whole life because it never works out. One of the greatest advice I ever got in life, a friend of mine who was a really, really, really successful guy. He came from very little. He really built himself up. God bless him. He told me one of the greatest pieces of advice I've ever heard in my life. I sat with him once and I asked him how he came. His father was a Holocaust. I said, "How did you manage to achieve so much?" And here's what he told me. That's what I want to share with you tonight. He said, "The index card." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Every day, try this for a week. He'll tell you, it'll blow you away." He said, every day, when he wakes up in the morning, he puts 4 things down on an index card. 4. These 4 things he is doing, no matter what. Unless the earth opens up and swallows him, he's going to finish these 4 things before he goes to bed. If it hits the card, it's a bond. Because you can't believe. Have you ever do this, by the way? You make lists, and then you remake lists, and you remake lists, and you ever do this? Like, it's like, and you're looking at something like, wow, it's the same list as like every single week, it's the same thing. He goes, when it hits that list, it's done. And when every morning you wake up in the morning, and there's 4 things that you're going to do, that no matter what, you start doing a lot of stuff over the course of your life. Exercise 1. Try this with me for 1 week. Treat your word as your bond. And pick 4 things, not 50 because it'll never work. Try this tomorrow. Pick 4 things where you say, if it hits the card, or if I say it, I'm doing it. And what you'll see is that the more you treat your word like your bond, the more God treats your word like your bond. The more you're able to see things, the more strength you're going to be able to have you never thought you'd have. You'll find a way to do things you never thought possible. But it goes deeper. This I really want to spend the rest of the class on. My mom is a psychologist. And she once was talking to me about a patient. I don't know, obviously I don't know the names, it's confidential, but she was so upset about something that she was treating a patient for a long time, a young couple, and they're about to get divorced. And at one point, the wife sits down and like she had a eureka moment. She looked at my mom, she goes, you know, I get it. My husband doesn't think I love him. And I really do. He's not my father. Her father's like a really big businessman. Her husband was trying but couldn't get it together. He goes, he's not my father, but you know what? I didn't marry my father. I married my husband. And I love him no matter what. My mom goes, oh my God. She's like, this is the issue. He has this thing that he's never going to live up to your father. Go home tonight. sit him down, tell him what you told me, and like, you don't have to come back. And she looks at my mom, she goes, no, I can't do that. She goes, why? She goes, because he's my husband. You're my therapist. I can say whatever I want to you. I can't go to my husband and tell him that. My mom walked away nearly broken. Here she is working for so long, and she reaches that point, but she can't say the words that would change her marriage to her husband. Right now in our lives, as I speak, how many relationships right now are we all a part of? Right now. That we know one conversation and the whole relationship is enhanced. One conversation with somebody in our lives where we say the words that we want to say and the relationship changes. One call to your mother or your father, say, by the way, I want to let you know something. Your whole life you're killing for me. I just didn't know if you really know that I appreciated it this much. I want to tell you how much I appreciate it. It wouldn't change your relationship with your parents. One conversation with your children. I know you didn't turn out exactly like me, but you know what? I'm proud of you for you. One conversation with the rabbi. I know 6 months ago, you spent a week on my problem, and then it resolved itself, and I haven't even said thank you to you. Look how hard you're working for me. By the way, imagine if rabbis got calls like that, they go crazy. One conversation with a guy who 20 years ago was your teacher in school, and or third grade, fifth grade, and they said something to you, and as they said it, you said, oh, really? And you look back and go, you know, the reason why I am where I am today is because of these 2 or 3 teachers. Can you imagine if you picked the phone right now and called them and said, by the way, thank you? It wouldn't change their day. Speech can't create. What is it that we want? At the end of the day, what we really want, isn't it just relationships? Don't we know that life is different when our relationships are strong? All the stuff in the world doesn't matter if we have no relationships. If we have great relationships, no matter what we go through, it's okay. Right now, as I speak, we can't create our own relationships. We can't, right now, change the way we treat our family. You have families where like in-laws are fighting with in-laws and sister-in-laws and brothers. They can't ever get around a table together. The mothers are going crazy. Because 10 years ago, you didn't invite me to this. And you can't pick up the phone and call. She can't call me. Don't tell you something. Do me a favor. She can't call me, but you're miserable. But I'm right. But you're miserable, but I'm right. But you're miserable, but I'm right. 20, 30 years, the family sits apart. What's going to change it? Gifts? No. What's going to change it? Words. One phone call. Relationship's different. Am I wrong? God says, you want a great life? You want an awesome life? You have the power. It's words. It's in your hands. Why don't we do it for? So it's because of this time of the year. It's because of this time of the year. You know, it's amazing, and with this I'll end. What's amazing, and I did a video on this, anyone who goes to h.com, I did a video on this a few years ago. What's amazing is that this time is one of the strangest times of the year. What happens, remember? Tisha B'Av is coming. And somehow we learned growing up that like Tisha B'Av is like voodoo day. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, you know, the boogeyman day. Hold up, because today's the day where just bad stuff happens. And when we're little kids, it's like, you know, stay home, don't swim, don't drive, like Hashem, as if the most merciful God of all time is like somehow in a bad mood, and he walks around with a bat, and so we duck for 3 weeks. As if our Father is like this. I don't know how this became, but it became. And we know this because we know that this happened, and this happened, this happened, this happened on this day. But if you look back at the Gemara in Tainus, it says that all this stuff stems from one moment, and this was the moment where everything went wrong on Tisha B'Av. What moment am I talking about? The spies. This is what started Tisha B'Av. A long time ago, Jews were standing in front of the Promised Land. And God said, good luck. And the Jews are like, you sound like you want us to fight. You know what I'm saying? He's like, no, you'll fight. Like, you guys we're like, well, no, we're Jews. You know what I'm saying? Like, we do a lot. We can negotiate, we can sue, you know what I'm saying? Like, we can heal, we can eat, we can complain. You know what we can't do is fight. That's not what we do. You'll never see a bunch of guys come out of a bar and be like, yo, the yeshiva just let out. Let's cross the street and get weird. Ever. No one's scared of us. Unless you put like a uniform on us and put us in an airplane. Outside that. And we're like, God's like, you can do it. We're like, we don't speak Hebrew yet. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, fight. Remember the story? We send in spies go in, spies come out, and they gather everybody together, and they go, we are going to die. And they cry tears of vain, and God says, you cry tears of vain, now you'll cry for generations. That's the story. Right? And so because those people, a long time ago, cried, we're like, great, thanks so much, we appreciate it. And now, like, every few generations, we got to be worried. So I was once telling over this story. And I was sitting in Detroit, Michigan. Now, there are some cities, I grew up in Brooklyn. I think I'm like a little bit of a tough guy. I grew up in Canarsie. But there's some cities I don't mess with. Detroit is the top of that list. I was sitting in front of high school students telling over this story. And a kid in the back in like a leather jacket, no smile. I don't think he even can smile. Raise his hand. And he goes, Rabbi. And I'm like, yes, scary man. Thank you for the sneak. I appreciate that. He said, that never happened. I'm like, okay, fine, never happened. You guys have been great. See you later. I'm going home. I said, well, how do you know? He goes, it couldn't happen. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, really? Jews are scared. They start to cry. And God says, you cried for nothing. I'll make you cry for generations. That doesn't sound like a merciful God to me. That sounds like my dad. I'm like, oh, okay. Too much information. Thank you very much. Kid asked a great kasha, right? You ever wonder? He was scared. God looks down at a bunch of Jews being scared and goes, you cried for nothing? Oh. Our God? Kel, Rachum, V'chanum? The most merciful God in the world looks down at a bunch of scared people and punishes them forever? That's how we understand our religion? So I heard a beautiful idea, and with this I'll conclude. If you look closely at what they said, you understand what's happening. They walked out and said, we have no chance. They're too big, they're too strong. And in that sentence, they say the following line that literally triggers. And when you read it, you should read it, it's in Shlach, you should read it inside. I'm telling you, this one line, you almost don't even believe it. It says, V'nihi v'nehi be'einenu kechagavim. We were, they're saying, in our eyes, like grasshoppers. V'chein hayinu be'eineihem. And so we were in theirs. Said we walked in, and we looked around, and we felt like grasshoppers, so we must have been grasshoppers. We felt inadequate, so we must be inadequate. I feel like I can't do math, Mommy. I must be that I'm too dumb. I can't ride on the bike, so I can't do the bike. And God says, who gives you the right to tell me what you can't do? Tell me you're scared. Tell me you'll try, I'll take. But tell me that you're not good enough because you're scared? Decide that you're inadequate even before you give it a chance? That, God says, is the root of destruction. I'm not bringing destruction on you. I love you. I'm your God. Your Father. The feeling, the mentality of I feel like I can't so that I can't. I feel like I'm not good enough so then I must not be good enough. That feeling is the essence of destruction. And in every single generation, you're going to face challenges. And as you face that challenge, you're going to feel like I can't. And if you say, if I feel like I can't, then I must not be able to, you will stay in destruction. Because it's the mentality that is destruction. That mentality hasn't left us until this day. The reason why we have the pain isn't because God's upset at us. It's because that one mentality, I feel like I can't, so I must not be able to. I feel like I can't, so I must not be able to. I don't know why. We're sitting around, we can't just get along already? Like, really? Another year of like, you look different and you look different, so it must be that you're not religious or not. Like, God's like, really? Really? 2,000 years and a bunch of Jews can't look at each other and go, you look different, but like, who cares? Who am I to judge you, for God's sakes? Come on, really? Sit on the floor. Another Tisha B'Av. And we sit there and God's like, really? Another year of this stuff? Can I get a bunch of Jews to stand up and go, yes, we can? Can I get a bunch of Jews to stand up and go, you know what? I feel like I can't, but I'm going to do it anyways. I feel like I'm going to fail, but I don't care. I'd rather fail than sit in the back and cry about it. Can I just get a couple of heroes, please, God says, to just stand up and stop being so scared and start realizing that they're powered by me? What can't they do? What obstacle can they not overcome if I'm inside them? And every generation, we go right back to that same problem. God goes, again, another year. And in that moment, there was one man to stand up. His name was Kalev. Remember what he said? He stood up in front of an entire nation of criers and he said, Alo na'alev v'nirashnu ourselves. Let's go conquer it. Ki yachol nuchala. Because yes, we can. every moment of our lives, we have those two voices. No, you can't. Yes, you can. No, you can't make a phone call. It's going to be weird. Yes, you can. It's right. No, you can't. Treat your word like your bond. It's too hard. Yes, you can. You're godly. Why live mediocre if you can live great? Tisha B'Av is when no, you can't wins. And we sit on the floor to remember that. This is the time of year where God looks down and goes, can I please get a couple of yes, you can people? Can I please just get a few? Just a few people to stand up and go, I don't care if we die in Israel. I'll fight and I'll fight and I'll fight. I'm not standing by the banks no longer and crying. I'm done crying. We're done crying. We've been crying for 2,000 years. We can create our future. We can create the future. It's just hard. It's hard to pick up the phone and make the tough phone calls. It's hard to treat your word like your bond. It's hard to be great. And the people that do it are godlike. They're born in Geula, they're redemption, they're utopian, they're Yehuda, they're royalty. The question isn't whether or not we can, the question is whether or not we will. And that's where we stand today. And I'll end the way I end. Anytime I get to speak to him, I know this is on tour anytime, so I'm sorry that you'll hear this again, but I just can't not. If I get to speak to an all-women's crowd, I get to say this without anyone getting mad at me. In this weird world, somehow women think they're not at the top. I don't know how this happens, because of the Greeks. In Judaism, the essence of our Yiddishkeit is our women. It's the women that brought us out. It's the women that looked at the men and said, it's over. And they said, it's not over. When Amram divorced his wife Yocheved, it's the woman Miriam who said, what are you doing? You giving up? Hope. Women brought us hope. Women never failed by the Chet HaEgel. It's the women that didn't sin at the Chet HaMeraglim. It's been the women that has always said to our community and to our nation, yes, we can. Stand up tall. Hope. We can do it. One community of women could tip the scales. One woman in our house could change a household. One woman in our family could change years of pain. One woman. Miriam brought Geula, did she not? One woman with a little bit of hope and a little bit of courage could lead our nation to Geula. And my bracha is that woman should be in the room right now. My bracha, it should be here. I don't want to wait anymore. I'm in 5 towns. You pick me up, we'll go together. It's okay. It's just a Van Wyck. And if Geula's coming, there won't be traffic, which is already a whole miracle unto itself. My bracha, my blessing to you, is that this should be the place. This year, we should look at our speech and realize how powerful we are. We should take every single I can't in our minds and push it to the side and create the relationships that we know we can have. Create the life we know we can have. Create the future that we know we can have. This should be the year that we stand up. We look at the Meraglim that are crying, and we look at Yehoshua, Kalev, who is screaming, and we join him with the yes we can mentality, and we walk with him to Yerushalayim HaKodesh. May it come soon in our days. B'mehera b'yameinu.